the way this will work is it's new information, new advanced sales that we really haven't covered before in depth. I know I've covered this briefly with Shane and Jamie, which though I know Jamie attributed one of his better days to this. But really this stuff is pretty golden, but it takes some concentration. So take some notes, try and understand it, hold the questions and ask them whenever you like, really. We'll try and keep this to under an hour, and we'll revisit this again and again in different ways until we understand it. But I appreciate you guys being on a voluntary call. It really does take a kind of learning mindset to wrap your head around this, so thank you for that. Excellent. So today, title is called Navigate, and it's all about selling in the way that people like to buy. So a story for this is my mom always told me growing up that you should always treat people in the way that you would want to be treated and communicate with people in the way that you would want to be communicated with. And I think the intent is right, but I think the reality is what we need to do, especially in sales, this just isn't true. We need to communicate and we need to sell not in the way that we like to be sold, but in the way that they like to be sold. And there's a big difference between a night in a nightclub and a Sunday morning in a church. What we're going to cover is navigating how to deal with that in sales environment. This isn't my content. This is written by a guy named Dustin Hillis. But yeah, Dustin Hillis would be the co-founder of Southwestern Consulting in a 150,000 person organization that's existed for more than 160 years. Dustin Hillis started out fairly well, but then went on to break the records of 150,000 people and 160 years of selling. He's currently an executive level coach and sales performance consultant, and he's author of a book called Navigate 2.0, and it's all about selling in the way that people like to buy. So for the call, guys, I'm keen for a bit of back and forth. Please ask questions when you've got them, but I'm keen to solidify what this is, what I'm even talking about, solidify what the 4 personality types are. Then we're going to go on to how to identify them in yourself and how to identify them in others. And then once you identify the personality type standing in front of you, is how to modify, how to adapt your chat and your communication style to a way that they appreciate and is going to make sense for them. Ultimately, they're going to walk away feeling more comfortable, or be part of the conversation, be more comfortable with the way you communicate, and ultimately be more open, making sales all the more likely as well. So guys, there's 4 types. So there'd be fighter, entertainer, detective, and counselor. Now, everybody in this call will probably be a combination of 2 of these. And what you will have as well is you'll have an opposite, or a versus. So you may be a fighter entertainer, and that would be your communication style, your personality type, and then you'll have an opposite. So one like a detective in that scenario, where you cannot communicate with a detective, everything about them probably annoys you, and vice versa. So let's go through each of them. The danger with this, guys, and please kind of put yourself outside your head when you're trying to figure out yourself, but you find a lot of the time when trying to identify your own personality types, is people go on the coolest title. So they go, I'd love to be an entertainer, or I'd love to be a fighter, or a detective sounds great, and they judge it on that. So these just happen to be what they're called. They could be a number of different things. So listen to the traits rather than the title. The title's the sexy part. Excellent. So we're going to go through fighter. So the reason fighters are great, I've got Conor McGregor there, but he's a cracking example. So the strengths, why fighters are great. Some of their strengths is they're results orientated. They like hitting goals. Set them a goal, they set themselves a goal, they kind of hit it. And then the other strength, major strength as well, is they're resilient. They can take a lot of hits. Those are massive advantages for salespeople, for business people, for whoever. So that's a massive trait. On the flip side of that, the weaknesses is they're impatient and they control. And if you notice, guys, it's the reverse of the strengths. So somebody's result-orientated, driven to their target, and they're resilient about getting there. Naturally, they're going to be impatient when things get in the way, and they're going to want to move things out of the way because they want to keep control. So that's the personality type there. Now, it's funny, having studied a little bit of psychology and quizzed Dustin and learned from other people, is there's really only two ways that people are motivated. And those are described in different ways, but really it comes down to towards motivated and away motivated. So towards the thing they want or away from the thing they don't want. Tony Robbins talks about it in terms of being motivated by either pleasure or avoiding pain. And these are the two guiding forces in everything that we do. The personality types will guide you through that as well. So with a fighter, the towards motivation is a determination to overcome the odds. Fighters like it when things are tough. And often what a fighter will do is make things tough. And everything's a fight. The phrases like life is hard and accomplishment are all kind of tied into what a fighter would think and how they would talk. When it comes to what they fear loss of control. So they want to be the one taking charge, and they're uncomfortable when they're not in control and not in charge, and it's ultimately what they fear, what they want to move away from. Now, under stress is the best time that you can identify which one you are, or which you have a dominant one and a secondary one. But under stress, you will default to this. Everything goes out the window. All the management, the leadership you've learned, all the skills you've learned, all the communication styles you've learned, they go out the window when stressed. So under stress, fighters bulldoze. So they run over people. Get out of my way, I've got shit to do. So when you're dealing with a fighter in store or in a DSG, in a John Lewis, it doesn't matter. In life, the objections you'll get is things like, I'm not interested. I don't have time. And the other one you'll get is, no. Now, because the fighters are the way they are, they'd be the most direct of any of the customers you'll come across. What's great about that is you get the truth. They don't care about your feelings. They just want to give you the answers so they can move on. Then if you were speaking to a fighter, what was your general impression? And their objections were, I'm not interested, or no, or I don't have time for this. How would you categorize that individual?
Rude twats.
Yeah. I tell you, that's a sign that you're not in the fighter category, exactly. So the reason I asked that question is it's so easy when you're not in that personality type to dismiss that individual as an arse or rude, because really they're reacting to the way you're communicating to them. If you were direct and to the point and just said the minimum, that would be music to their ears and you wouldn't get that. So our job is to speak in the way that makes sense to them so they even have the time to listen. The next one is the entertainer. So the entertainer would be, I've got Fresh Prince as the example here. But your entertainer is your loud, bold character, your person, the person with the spotlight. Some of the strengths are they're extroverted. They come across as enthusiastic and confident, rather. They're enthusiastic. And these entertainers often make really, really solid salespeople. They're naturally good at being enthusiastic and selling products because they're really always selling something in the way they communicate. Some of the weaknesses at the other side of that, they talk too much. They also follow through. They also fail to follow through. So all about big ideas, all about stories, all about excitement, but the follow-up isn't really as interesting to them because there's no excitement there. So the towards motivation is this is an individual that aspires for affirmation. So inspiration, motivational videos, quotes, stuff like that makes sense to an entertainer. Ideas, vision is all exciting to an entertainer. That's what they aspire to. They work. You know, if you're an entertainer, you work hard because of this vision of the future that you have. That's what drives you. The fear, which is surprising, I would have thought, that is rejection. They don't want to. They hate rejection. The thought of somebody putting themselves out there for somebody to reject that is the ultimate fear. And under stress, this is the interesting one, guys. Is under stress, entertainers will become overwhelmed. So there's too many options. How do I even decide? So the typical objections that you'll really get, that's how they'll feel. How that will be worded to you in their objections will be on price. They'll talk about price as an objection. Not today. Call me tomorrow. So they're not great. Typically, they're not great decision makers. They're not fast to make a decision. So they need time to ponder and for things to sit in the head. So probably, Jamie, what you experience a lot more often, right, is price objections and I need to think about it. Yeah. But really what they're feeling is, I'm overwhelmed, I need to reset, and I need to think this through. Excellent. So the next one would be counsellor. So I've got a picture here of Ellen DeGeneres to symbolize this, but counsellors are great. Counsellors are team players, and counsellors are active listeners. When they ask a question, they genuinely care about the answer. It's not to get anything from you. So these are people. These are individuals that don't really care what you do with your Saturday night as long as all your friends are there. These are individuals that value the family. They value the friends, and they almost don't care as much about what you do and how you do it as long as the right people are involved. So that's the positives of the individuals. The challenges or the weaknesses of the counsellor is they're generally really slow to make a decision. There's no fast acting with counsellors. The other thing is they'll bottle up emotions. So it's quite low, quite timid. If an extreme one would be quite shy and quite low and quite timid in that way, but ultimately cares about the family and friends and things like that and people around them. But they're never going to share in the way that an entertainer would or a driver would. So the towards motivation is they desire consistency, and the fear is the opposite of that. So the fear is change. So if you're dealing with other individuals in our business, as a leader in our business, you yourself, if you have the idea of change or it bothers you that things change, then maybe you're a counsellor. Under stress is they avoid controversy. So they give up on the argument pretty quickly because it's not that important. They'd rather get on than be right. The objections you'll get is they'll often pass the buck. So they'll often they'll say they're not the decision maker, yes, Simon, how many times have you had people say, I need to speak to my wife, or I need to speak to my husband, or I need to speak to my son, or I need to speak to my uncle?
Yeah, quite a lot. Like, going forward.
Yeah, that's a counsellor you're dealing with. Yeah. The interesting thing about counsellors, guys, is when we talk in the sales talk, when we talk about defining whether the right people are in front of you, the reason that's in there, guys, is because I appreciate a fighter doesn't really need their wife there or their husband there. But counsellor absolutely will. They won't make a decision based on what they believe. They base a decision based on the consensus. So when they're talking about soundbars, when they're talking about whatever, they're going to think, how's this going to impact my family? Is my wife going to like this? Or is she going to be concerned about the wires? Are my kids going to use this? That's the kind of thoughts that they have. So that'd be a counsellor. Now, a detective as well. A detective is, what's great about detectives is that they're detail orientated and they're perfectionists. So what they do is often of a pretty high standard. The challenges of this is they default into negativity, so they're quite pessimistic. And the other weaknesses is they get, and this is the overriding one, is they get analysis paralysis. So they need to know everything before they'll make any kind of decision. And because of that, they need to know everything and they chase perfection. They never make a decision. So motivates them, the toward motivation, is accuracy. If I think of a Sherlock Holmes or that level of detail, if I think of a great detective within our own business, Forrest Gordon would be one of the best detectives we have, because his passion is to get the numbers correct and to figure out our returns percentage and all the work that he does. But it's really important to Forrest that he gets it right. The fear of detectives is making mistakes. They would rather take longer to do a task and get it right than just get it done. Versus the driver, the entertainer would get it done yesterday. And it might be horrible, but at least it's done early for the driver, for the fighter, sorry. And the entertainer will probably tell you a story about how he got to that point, or she. Under stress, they go over pessimistic, and nothing's going right. The objections you'll get is, let me think about it, let me check out other options, let me read reviews.
I would say probably like 1 out of 3. Most people say, I need to think about having coffee, or we need to just chew over and look at the reviews, so forth.
Sure. And then those that don't come back, maybe 1 in 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's your detective you're dealing with. Right. So those are the 4 personality types, guys. What is your behavior style? What are you most like? Not the title, but the characteristics. And what are you least like? Then I want to volunteer what they think they might be. Rich?
I'd say, funny enough, and this is always a challenge with these, because you do veer towards the name. But I was looking at this last night when I got it sent out, and I was thinking, I think with age, I've gone from being the entertainer, I think I've mellowed, to probably being a counsellor come fighter, I think. Characteristics, I think I've become a little bit more patient, still results orientated and resilient, probably semi-controlling, but also mellowed a little bit into being that counsellor sort of role as well. So bottles up emotions, very much so.
Good. And then by default, probably not the great thing is, like the goal of this is to be a chameleon and to evolve into the thing that you're not, so you can be all 4. It's great to hear that Rich is moving. I myself, according to this, I actually thought I was a lot more of a counsellor than it turns out I am. Apparently, based on this, I have no fear of change. I actually get frustrated when things don't get changed. Loss of control, and my natural state is to bulldoze. So, and then I'm obviously loud and I talk far too much. So, fighter, entertainer, and then my versus, the one I struggle with to default, is your detective. I never value the time things should take. I always think it should be done faster, which is my default and the thing I work towards. And then the counsellor, I believe to be important, to look after people, but it's something I work at to do. The challenge, guys, and the reason we have to get great at this and learning people is because identifying what somebody is you really only have 7 seconds. We've all heard that. People take 7 seconds to judge you and decide whether they like you or not. Otherwise, it's an ice skating uphill beyond that. So here's some ways to identify what the person in front of you might be, and we'll go through this. So if you look at the graph here, it's voice quadrants as well. So you can, but it's slow to fast or soft to loud. So if you're let's go around them. If you're a fighter, you speak slow, but you speak loud. So everything you say is with authority. So you are a fighter. If you're an entertainer, then you speak really fast and really loud, and everything's really exciting, and you're enthusiastic in the way that you speak. The counsellor would be slow and soft. So they speak with authenticity. They care about what you have to say. And when they ask questions, they really want to know the answer. The detective speaks fast and soft. So when they speak, they talk about the numbers and they talk about what's going on and they talk about all the details of what needs to happen and what they've been doing over the last couple of days. And it's all gone a bit wrong because they're a bit pessimistic. But that would be your fast-speaking, soft-speaking detective as well. So look, that's one way to identify that. And review that, guys, and try yourself, figure out yourself. The other one is a handshake. Now, we don't do this as often in store, but when a fighter shakes a hand, it'll be a jabbing motion. Just think of Arnold Schwarzenegger marching towards you and the way that he would shake your hand. It's a jabbing motion. It's a firm handshake. And the other thing, guys, is it's on top as well. So the way they'll shake their hand is they might even tilt yours to go underneath. So their hand is on top and yours is underneath. This is really just to let you know they're in charge. That's what they want you to know. The counsellor hesitates and has a soft handshake, kind of like a wet fish handshake. They might even just keep their hands in their pockets, even with your hand out. The detective is a calculated, moderated handshake where they almost look at your hand to figure out what they have to do and put their hand out to the right distance. And then they're very aware of space as well. So they go, this is my space, this is your space. They're typically not the most affectionate, handsy people. The entertainer will be extroverted, overextended handshake. So it would almost be a bit, it could, if you get an extreme entertainer, they're pretty unpredictable in that they could shake your hand, they could give you a high five, they could do a bro hug, they could give you a big kind of, it's really anyone's game. Because it's more about how they do it than what they're actually doing. You come across recently shaking someone's hand and they've nearly crushed the bones in your hand, or you try to reach out and shake someone's hand and they've given you a wet fish back?
I think you see more wet fish than anything. I'll give them what I do, but yeah, I mean all of those traits I've over the years, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're all familiar.
Good stuff. The other one as well, and this is more for you guys to understand yourself, because obviously we don't work in an office environment, but for the goal of these calls is to add value to your skills and yourself, so you can use this at Orbit Sound, but then beyond as well. But a little bit is office environment. So a fighter will always have awards, plaques, and prestige in the office, in their space. It might even be your bedroom at home. So there's awards on the wall of what they've achieved. It'll say top salesperson. It'll say ASL of the year. That'll be kept. They'll have plaques of things they've done. They'll have a picture framed of them climbing Kilimanjaro and just all the accomplishments that they've had in their life. A counsellor will have pictures of the family and pictures of the team, pictures of maybe their kids if they're older, things like that. And that'll be what's on the wall of a counsellor. The detectives will be clean and organised. And a fun thing to do in the office of a detective is to put a pad of paper or something down on their desk at a skew width angle and see how long it takes them, how many milliseconds it takes them to straighten it up. It's quite funny. The entertainer, guys, is messy, but they don't know it. So if you've ever tidied your room or tidied your office or tidied your home or tidied your flat, and then somebody has come in and said, this place needs a tidy, or give this place a tidy before we get guests. And you go, I just did. I thought it was. That means you're an entertainer. So you're always messier than you think you are. So that's the how to identify it, guys. Now, what I was keen to go through, like I say, with the 3 points, was to identify or solidify what these 4 types are, identify the individual and what they are, and then also modify. So just before we go into modify, who thinks they could give me a really pretty solid description of a fighter?
I'd say a fighter is somebody with high self-esteem, likes to make quick and punctual decisions, may not believe everything you're telling them, and will objectify against you a lot of the time.
Have you come across a couple of fighters in store?
I would say out of the 4, it's probably the least one that comes up in, especially in a John Lewis kind of environment. Off the top of my head, I can't give a massively good example apart from the only thing I was thinking of is possibly when you get those people who, when you show them a soundbar or an audio sound speaker, and they automatically go back to what they've had before, say something like, I've always had those, or something like that. not quite believing that Orbit Sound is a superior brand is what you're telling me.
Sure. Well, it's funny actually. That person at least lives part of the way in a counsellor, because their ultimate fear is change. So those customers and we'll go into that now. But those customers that say silly things, like their objections will be silly. They won't make any sense. They'll say things like, "Well, I just don't want to change my remote. I like my Bose remote," or "I've always had Sonos," or "I've got the Sonos Play 1, so I was going to buy the Play Bar, the Play 3, and the Play 5." You go, okay, you don't have to do that. And their general objections won't make a lot of sense to you. And it isn't because they believe the objection itself. It's more they just fear something new. Excuse me. Who can give me a good description of, so we've done fighter, counselor. Who can give me an entertainer? Ben?
Yeah, sure. So someone kind of fast, out talking, like good with emotions, as in like they get inside the people, but they can also get kind of swallowed up by their own emotions. I'm stressing that.
Yeah.
Not too good at making decisions. Again, because of emotions. So, yeah, you just kind of, I mean, it's hard for them to follow through. So you need to kind of lay things out and kind of push them a bit.
Yeah. The other big way to find them as well is they're the loudest person in the room. If you get the funny thing to notice is when you get two of these characters together. So you get two fighters together, you get a fight. You get two entertainers, you get this kind of brawl for attention. You get two counsellors together and they're probably hugging. You're getting two detectives, they're talking the detail of something. And that's extreme. Obviously, people aren't as concrete in one. But you'll probably be, like I say, you'll have two that you'll naturally fall into or bounce between. And then you'll have the opposite one that you just cannot relate to. So the next part, guys, I want to talk about is we've got our cycle of selling. We need to really structure our cycle of selling in the way that we speak to the customers in the future and partners and management and leadership and everyone and DSG guys and whoever else, is we need to speak to them in the way that they like to be spoken to. So here's a couple of things to consider when doing that. So a fighter, how do you close a fighter? Major thing is their fear, right? Is loss of control. So you give them control. You answer their what questions, because it's the bare minimum they need to know. What does this do? What does this plug into? You know, will my TV have this? It's very, I've pretty much decided I just need to know this, this, and this. Give them a choice of two positives, guys. With a fighter, is if you take control and if you go, so yeah, you need the 40-inch Samsung and the A70, and that'll do you, sir. That'll drive him crazy or her crazy. So if you say, it's really up to yourself, sir, is the A70 available or the M9? What would be better for you? And they'll go, or which would you prefer? They'll choose, they're in control, and you still win, right? The other thing as well is not to argue. With fighters is they'll always want to win. So we kind of have to take the path of least resistance. Well, a fighter might respect another fighter, but they're never going to get on the same page as one. So you being a fighter with a fighter isn't going to work. So if someone says, well, it's not, they give you sort of objection, and if you rebuttal, it becomes a fight. The way to do it is to give them two options. And like I say, and we can talk about detail of that later. But the next one is to navigate an entertainer as well. So when closing an entertainer, your Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, is you sell the sizzle. You don't sell the steak. You don't sell the optical connection and any of that stuff. You just sell the big picture, the idea of taking it home, of sitting down with the family and watching, or your friends and watching an epic movie on a Friday night or a Sunday night, things like that. That's the story that you tell. And you want to do a kind of crystal ball looking into the future close with an entertainer. They'll appreciate the story and they'll buy into the story. And these are the individuals that don't care how much it costs. necessarily. They might object to the price, but really that's because they don't envision it yet. The detectives as well. So I'll ask the question because this is perhaps quite obvious, but what's a detective going to value, and how do we close and communicate with a detective?
Facts.
Yeah. Use facts and logic. Use stats. Answer their why questions. If the questions come up, why does this happen? Why does it do that? Why does it have an optical, not an HDRI? Whatever. That's because they want to know the answer. Now, this is the really interesting bit, guys, is how you close a detective. The default of the detective will be to procrastinate. This is, we love yeses, we love no's, but we've got hate maybes, because maybes mean we didn't do our job. A detective will always default to maybe, and they will passionately and uncomfortably default to maybe. They don't want to be that non-decision maker, but they believe they need time to process the information. So once you've used your facts and your logic, it's just 3 steps to take. So product, price, and performance close. So direct questions of, what do you think of the product? Do you think the price is fair for the product? Does it perform as you would need it to? Or a different word for that, but PPP. And they'll go, yes, yes, yes. If they have objections, you answer the question. You don't tell stories. You answer the question. Do you like the product? And the word is fair. Do you think the price is fair? Not do you think the price is good? Do you think the price isn't the price awesome? That won't have impact. Is the price fair? It's words like logical, practical, fair, sensible, right. These are the words you want to use. So is the product do you like the product? Is the price fair, and will it perform how you need it to? Will it do what you need it to? That's another way. Now, here's the funny thing, and this is the confidence we need to be great at this, guys. Is with a detective, with a clear detective, you need to close directly and with logic. Meaning, if they've answered those 3 questions correctly and said yes to all 3, they want it. They need you to stop them procrastinating. So you need to go to them. They say yes, yes, yes. You need to go to them, look them in the eye, and go, "You should buy this." The reason that works is because this detective has struggled all their life with the inability to make decisions. The idea of somebody telling them this is the right thing and giving them certainty and getting rid of their fear of making a mistake, that's what's going to win it, guys. So for the detectives that need the stats, the final closes, the smart thing to do is buy this, sir. Direct and clear. Jamie, do you think that's something you can implement next time you see a detective?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely made sense. Yeah.
They need somebody to take charge of their decision making when it comes to this. And again, it's when they're on board. So it's yes, yes, yes. Now the final one is how to navigate a counsellor as well, a people person. So don't be demanding of them. It's the opposite of a fighter. Answer their how questions. How does this work? They want to understand. Take change gradually. So the pace of this conversation will be slower. A fighter, you can close it. I've had some of my favorite sales have been under a minute sales. Just this is what it is. This is what it sounds like. Do you want to get it? That's a fighter. Some of the slower sales are the counsellors who need to understand and need to kind of wrap their head around it all. The thing to do, guys, and this is the advanced sales that we're going to finish on with, and then time for questions if you have them, when you have them. A counsellor is an interesting one because often the biggest mistake you can make, guys, is to sell a counsellor or speak to a counsellor really by themselves. Because how that conversation will inevitably end is when the counsellor goes, think it looks good. I'm going to need to speak to this person, this person, this person. Because that's how they make decisions. It's not on what they believe, it's what they believe, how it will impact the group that their tribe. So, Julian, have you ever had it where you've done a great presentation, somebody was on board, but then they end with, I need to go and speak to person X?
Absolutely, yes,
yeah. So that's your counsellor. The mentality to go at this with, guys, if they are a true counsellor, there's nothing that can be said, because the reasons they buy are not going to come from you. They're going to come from their family and their friends or whoever they value. Now, this is the walkout close, guys. This is some really, really advanced stuff. Now, if you're still trying to wrap your head around this stuff and you only kind of half get it, and you're like, I need to try this before I do anything else, then ignore my next 5 minutes. If you're really pretty switched on with this and you get it, and you feel like you're doing half of it already, that's great. This is called the walkout close. So for counsellors, I want to set the scene is you've got husband and wife, and both of them are clearly counsellors. They keep asking, what do you think? What do you think? Yeah, this could work for person X. Wouldn't little Johnny, wouldn't he love that? Wouldn't this impact him? And they're always talking about people, they're always talking about each other. What I'm going to need you guys to do when you identify that and you recognize the right people are there to make a decision, but you don't want to close too hard, is I want you to go to the individual, your counsellor, and say, and once you've said everything you're going to say, and you said, do you like this, do you like that, is this going to work, is it going to go in the wall or whatever, then I want you to do the walkout close. The walkout close is to say, so I kind of told you everything I need to tell you about the product. You've got all the information. I'm going to go and I need to just go and deal with a couple of things. I'll be 5-10 minutes. I'm going to give you guys a chance to talk about this and really figure out if it's right for you. And they'll appreciate that. They'll need that time. Now here's the key bit, guys. What we currently do, and the thing we need to evolve beyond, is we let people go and get a coffee, or we let people go home and think about it. Again, the counsellor lives in a place where decision making doesn't come quickly. So you give them the time. You say, I tell you what, just go away, or rather, hang out here, have a think in the place that you're going to make a decision, and I'll disappear. I'll be the one to exit. I'm going to come back in 5-10 minutes. I really don't mind whatever you think's best for you, but what I'm going to ask is that you give me a big fat yes or a big fat no. So to summarize that, guys, is you go, so I've really given you all the information I can. You know, everything about the bar, how it works, and the TV, and the benefits of it all. I see you guys probably need to talk about it for a minute. I'm going to disappear. I've got some things I need to do anyway. I'll be back in 5-10 minutes. It really doesn't matter to me whether if you want to go for it or not. Just let me know with a big fat yes or big fat no. That sound okay? Excuse me, guys, I'm losing my voice. So the biggest thing with that, guys, is you're giving them the space they need to make the decision. The right people are there, and Mr. Jones is going to turn to Mrs. Jones and go, what do you think? And she's going to go, I like it, what do you think? Or what do you think? And it'll go back and forth. They'll come to a conclusion, and then that'll be your decision, because that is the only way you'll get a decision. It's not you influencing it, it's them together. Now, the risk, of course, is none of this is perfect. You might just turn around and say no, and that's okay, because we love the yeses, we love the nos, and the maybes mean we haven't done our job properly. So that's called the walkout close. Again, we can cover that later, because that's pretty advanced, but the steps of that is giving them space to speak to each other, leaving them and telling them when you'll be back, and then the third step is asking for a yes or no, the fourth step being you pray, because it might be a no. So that would be the 4 personality types, guys. That would be how to solidify what they are in your own head, how to identify and how to modify what you do and why you do it. And surely, I'm very, very confident that at this stage you guys will understand why, if you're naturally a fighter, you would have to adapt for a detective. Or if you're a detective, you'd naturally have to adapt for the guy trying to fight you for the to win, and vice versa. If you want to speak about this, guys, I have 11 o'clock till 11:30. Alternatively, later on in the day, tomorrow, weekend, whenever you like, we can go through this. It's not the first time I'm going to go through it. I've recorded this call so we can listen back. But if I was going to recommend, guys, I would pick one of these types and work towards communicating in that way. Any questions?
Nope.
Shane, what's one thing you can use going forward?
I've done it a bit. Oh, sorry, can you hear me? I've got your mute.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The one thing that I've used before and I've used quite a lot is when you recognise, and I did it with Simon actually while I was with him on Sunday, but you'll recognise that kind of counsellor and needs to make a decision, and you can wander away and leave them, and then you'll wander back in and go, well guys, how are you getting on? If you want my opinion, to be fair, I really think you grab one while you're here. And it's kind of just that little cheeky bit at the end that they're kind of like, oh yeah. And then they look at, like you say, they look at the wife and go, oh yeah, maybe we should do that. And the wife
weird,
goes,
right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, really strange.
So it's we, it's never I. Yeah. So that's the thing like I say, my advice is to start out with one of these and work on it. The other approach to take, guys, is if you identify the extremes. So if you come across a massive fighter or an entertainer or detective, it's just be really aware of that. You'll be able to figure out the rest a lot of the time. Just being aware of the kind of person you're speaking to and what they're going to value. With a counsellor, you talk about we, togetherness. A fighter, you talk about to the point. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being on the call, guys.
Oh, have a good one.
See you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.